IVM.
We are here to tell you about Cred.
Cred is an awesome app that helps you pay your credit card bills.
Not only is it a great app, it's an exclusive club of high trustworthy individuals that gets rewarded for doing good. And one of the ways you can do good is by paying your bills on time.
Exactly. And there are always some amazing rewards and cashbacks to be won.
So really guys, let's just simplify your life. Just download Cred.
Hello and welcome to Simblified, the podcast where four clueless hosts try to explain something to a more clueless audience. This time around, we've actually tried to get us a little bit more clue by bringing on a special guest whom we'll come to in a minute. But hi guys, welcome to Simplified.
Hi.
Oh, yeah, thanks for welcoming me onto our own show.
So the guest we have today is actually a classmate of mine, Nipun Cherian, Naren. But actually, he's had the great honor of contesting the real elections in Kerala this time around. So what we wanted to briefly chat to him about was try and understand what the actual sort of politics is like beyond the liberal narrative that we keep hearing and become very happy about in Kerala. So I must say, the first time I remember Nipun in school was we all went to this very extremely Catholic school where they had to teach evolution in 8th standard. And we were all like, straddling on both sides. I was an altar boy at the time. But I remember Nipun very, very firmly questioning the biology teacher and all science teachers for that matter to say, how can you even mix religion with science? It's very clear that evolution is scientifically proven. You're a school, you should be doing better.
Wow. That is so
And then the next
Flying in that classroom.
Yeah. And then next time I heard Nipun, I was actually in engineering in NIT Warangal, undergoing ragging in first year and then maybe condoning it in the second year, though not actively participating. But Nipun made the headlines for actually questioning ragging in model engineering college in Trikakara as well. So that's the, kind of man he is. He's always ahead of the time and active to get into the things and get down and dirty with it. So I think post the 2018 floods in Kerala for the first time is when Nipun actively got into politics, and he's been there ever since. And he's in fact contested this elections as well. I mean, and it's a start, but to be fair, he's won as many seats as the BJP this time. So that's a credible achievement in itself. I'm making a joke, Nipun, don't get serious. So Nipun, welcome to Simplified. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? Because I have not done a really great job.
Although you painted a great picture, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah. The highlights are there, no? Like good opening film, opening cut for Nipun's film, which will be released 20 years from now.
Thank you, Tony. So I am basically by profession an engineer. And like Tony mentioned, it's been only recently that I ventured into active politics. So by profession, I'm into robotics, and I've been happily, working in my domain since 2012. And 2018 changed perspectives, drastically for not just me, for many youngsters in Kerala. 2018 floods. It was, floods that we'd say repeated after 100 years, and that also brought about a lot of changes in the way the youth in Kerala, started looking at society and the politics. Many of us got a feeling that we should get involved in things and in the decision making that's going around right next to our homes or right in our cities. So this is a significant change in the sense. If you look at, Tony mentioned, we are classmates from school. So if you look at the private education that's been going on in Kerala for the last many decades, the involvement in local issues and the issues within the state and the attraction that the students get to the local body governance or the state governance is very minimal. there's a lot of exposure to national politics and international politics, but beyond that, at the local level, the exposure to things that matter and things that affect your life is very little. Part of this is because of the culture in Kerala to migrate to the Middle East, to Australia, to US or Europe. So 2018, that way is also important because a lot of youngsters, do realize that home is perhaps a better place, and you might unlike decades before, there are job opportunities, and and the situation abroad is also changing. The first class citizen label is probably only available here. So such thoughts have come into the social domain, and therefore the level of involvement is increasing. So in that context,
So let me just set that up a little bit, right? So I think since 2018, especially in Kerala, we've had events where you can't no longer be cocooned in your own space in the room and just be connected to the outside world through the internet. There are actually local issues that needed coordination. The floods repeated again in 2019. There was the Nipah virus, which we couldn't do much about. Then COVID hit, obviously, and everything changed, which also meant a lot of us who lived outside Kerala because of work from home could come back here. And in fact, I voted for the first time in Kerala after leaving my home for engineering when I was 17 or so, right? So, but what I wanted to talk about was, you briefly touched upon how the consumption of national and international politics is much more. And actually, the narrative that gets put out is of, in opposition to whoever is at the center for some reason, right? And we saw that even during the Lok Sabha elections in Kerala, where the entire sort of voting swung a certain way, and this time it swung a different way. So to that extent, do you think the narrative has hijacked the politics in Kerala, where there have always been two strong sides? And people in Kerala, unlike what we like to believe outside of it, are actually fairly conservative when it comes to voting. They care about the religion, the community they belong to, and they usually vote along what their parents have voted for as well.
Basically, the question is on the position taken vis-a-vis the national politics, right? The voting pattern against the ruling coalition of the ruling party in India. So there is a very strong sentiment in Kerala against BJP and NDA because of the Sangh Parivar, because of the positions taken by BJP when it comes to social affairs and religious matters. So people of Kerala do realize that political parties should stick to politics and not get into the other spaces where political parties have no role from a modern democracy perspective. So from here, what we see is that BJP is getting into personal spaces. For example, as a political party, BJP has positions on elements in BJP evidently has positions on what people should eat, what people should not eat, so on. So that is a major factor where probably, I don't know how far this is a factor in rest of India, but in Kerala this is a factor people consciously or subconsciously do feel the threat of a political party. This could be any political party. Party.
So my question, sorry to step in. My question was largely around BJP getting 0 seats in Kerala is actually just status quo, and people in Kerala continue to vote for the left or the UDF depending on what their parents have voted for and stuff like that. So, for instance, I think 2020 party actually got more vote share than BJP this time, right? So it's just a reflection of people continuing to vote for these two parties as opposed to
entertaining something
completely
new.
progressive sense, progressive embracement in that sense.
And just to add on to Tony's question, if it helps it, so what you're saying, Tony, is that it's less about a rejection of the BJP and it's more a rejection of anything else new that might be coming in. So if there's another party with another stand that's coming in, I'm sure Nipun will have a lot to say about that. It's also about a rejection of, it's like not even considering that. So in that sense, it is conservative in the true sense of the word, which is just sticking to, like you said, status quo.
I have a slightly different take because I wouldn't generalize this. I would again split this into different age groups. We should look at the demographics as well. So see, it is for a great part of the population. It is not about rejecting anything new. It is about evaluating the new. So BJP is not new. BJP is not new in Kerala in the sense BJP and RSS has had organizational structure here for a very long time. In the Kerala's context, you must not just measure the presence of an organization or in terms of electoral politics or in terms of results of electoral politics. Whether it is the CPIM, whether it is a Congress, whether it is the BJP, even 2020. So if you look at the history of 2020, started in 2012 as a society, and they had shops selling, food items at a very low rate to people in that particular village. So in Kerala, all of these organizational structures, all of these political parties have an organizational structure interacting with the people in totally different means other than direct politics. So people do evaluate their performance and their contributions from that perspective as well. Yes, Congress, CPIM and BJP have a much longer history, and especially Congress and CPIM have a history from the pre-independence era. So it is not about rejecting the new, but it's more about evaluating the new. So one, there is this time that this society here will take to evaluate the new. Second, of course, among a significant section of the population, which I would put at 20%, 20 to 25% would strictly vote for either the Congress or the CPI. So that's the fixed voting population, in my view.
Okay. And I mean, more broadly, right? I was referring to, do people has the voting changed to, preferring a strong leader or a central figure rather than voting for issues? Because, I mean, the results of the Lok Sabha elections were that the Congress-led front won 19 out of 20 seats. And this time it was a reversion to the government led by Pinarayi Vijayan, who is hogging a lot of limelight now. Winning a lot because, and he's been deified as captain and stuff like that. So is there some merit to that people are looking at strong leaders and not necessarily voting for issues? Because even if you look at the AAP, right, and it's Arvind Kejriwal who steals the show here. And I think Kerala also had a brush with the Aam Aadmi Party, of which I think you were also involved briefly with, right?
Yes, that observation is correct. That there is an attraction towards strong leadership. This has also to do with the kind of public relation activity and the event management activity that has been going on. Which I would say Modi introduced it. Pinarayi Vijayan picked it up really well in Kerala. So that's also where the objections to these politics emerge from people like me, where the kind of marketing that you would expect in selling Maggi noodles, for example, is that kind of a pattern is now there in politics. So the support for a strong leadership is also a factor of the event management and the PR activity that is going on in the political arena.
Add to it the IT cell equivalent of cyber commenters, right? Who hype up everything, and this is true for both these personalities as well.
It's like, you have a series, going on all the time. You have a television series, going on all the time. With the
Yeah, but
news.
one with far more consequences than.
Can I just sort of derail the conversation, which is threatening to get extremely serious, into something which is more on the simplified sort of thing? So I heard it said that if God had intended politicians to think, he would have given them brains. So in your experience, what is the general level of cleverness, or like, are most politicians egomaniacal to an extent that they can't see what's in front of them? Because a lot of the policies and choices that they make, so there are two explanations. One is they are dense, and the second is they are dealing with imperatives that most of us can't see. We don't know what forces are acting on them. So in your experience, so I mean, I'm leaving the corruption and so there'll be some bad eggs who are really bad and they are corrupt and they're womanizing and they're doing all that. But most of the people are career politicians. They're not,
they're for a fast buck.
Yeah, they're. So what is your assessment of the general politician in Kerala, whom you have had a great, opportunity to observe closely now?
See, at the higher levels, they're very smart and they're very objective. Now, what is their objective? To come back to power in the next elections. So the objective for them is very simple: to get votes in the next elections. So that's, they don't work, they don't think beyond that. So if you look at them as plain humans with a very clear objective. If you compare with a poor family whose only objective is to get food for the family, just like that, the professional politicians, they have to get votes. That's all, and they will do what it takes to get votes. So from that perspective, however you try to explain it, the point is they're just smart and they stick to their objective. The problem there is when they work in that manner, you as an outsider of the existing political system, you see lack of vision, you see lack of efficiency, you see lack of result-oriented functioning, because we tend to measure in terms of how economy is growing, how our lives are changing, how public wealth is utilized. See, I think it would come down to that particular point. If you look at India, India is rich and Indians are poor. That statement is very important. If you kind of take a measure, or if you try to understand the enormous amount of public wealth and the quality of life most of us have in India, so that mismatch is not being addressed. So that is because the electoral politics and in general politics in India has evolved in a way where politicians are able to trick us to vote for them. So they are mastering that art of trickery for votes.
Nipun, do you think that and just to sort of just dig a little deeper into that point again, do you think that politicians think that Indians don't have an appetite for nuance, in the sense we always just wish that our politicians would level with us a little more? Boss, we are not dumb. We can see what's happening over there. Yeah. Just accept up to your faults. It's okay. To make a mistake is completely okay. Just say that and just move on, instead of trying to, constantly protect yourself and think that we are going to, whatever. So do you think at some level, politicians also have lost the ability to nuance, or there are imperatives that tie the hands and say, no, you can't show us, for example, you can't show weakness, you can't show vulnerability. Is it okay for politicians to show vulnerability? Because in fact, I think that might appeal to us even more. I've always felt closer to my bosses, for instance, who have shown us that, hey, we are also in the same boat and we are thinking of how to solve these problems, rather than say, no, everything's fine, nothing to see over here.
See, so how many of the voters would think in the manner you just narrated? That's the important question that a politician would look at. So if you take a constituency, for example, if you take an assembly constituency, there are nearly 2 lakh voters. And to win that seat, you need to get, say, 35 to 45% of votes of the total votes polled. Now, I'm getting into numbers when you asked a slightly different kind of question, but this is where the politician thinks in a different way.
That's where their arithmetic is at.
Yeah. So you have 2 lakh votes in a constituency, of which, say, 1,50,000 votes will be polled, and the politician needs to get 50 to 60,000 votes to win that constituency. So he is looking at the behavior and the attitude and the approach of, say, 1 lakh voters of the 150,000. He's looking at 1 lakh voters and targeting to get 50 to 60% of that target voters. So you may not even be there in that 1 lakh voters.
Yeah,
people like you.
Yeah, no, I was saying you already know the arithmetic. You know the status quo is loaded against someone entering fresh and without the resources that a traditional party has. So, what is your take on the whole thing? Like, why are you so invested in politics? How do you get into it?
So, see, the need of the moment is a phase of social engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at CPIM or the Congress, they in fact did, their founding leaders did pass through or did go through a phase of social engineering, transforming the society. So we are currently in that phase where we need to attempt a phase of social engineering. So the crux of the point now is people's participation in governance. So that is what we are trying to put across, and that is our idea, core concept of the social engineering that we are engaged in. Which, Tony, to answer to the other question, so I am optimistic that we will be able to do this in a time-bound fashion in the coming decade, because if you look at if I speak just about the people in Kerala, the reading habits are much better in terms of most of the people read newspapers, and that habit is higher compared to probably other states. So even if you have not so educated person in people read newspapers and people read documents. So it is possible to get into a large section of the population. It will take time. It will take years to get the idea across and convince. So it is going to be a phase of social engineering that will change the way a significant population in Kerala will think.
I think that's an important point, right?
That's good to hear also.
Yeah.
So
that
the media mix being... Yeah, sorry, Srikeit.
Yeah, go ahead. Finish your point, Tony.
No, the media mix being also skewed in favor of papers means that it's not just like panels shouting at you from 24/7 television. You get column inches to actually cover local news and make an impact there and get people educated about what the real issues on the ground are.
Yeah. And on that, actually, just that's the other question that I wanted to ask, because Meghnad from News Laundry had put this really well in one of his videos, where he talked about how the general perception across India of politics amongst the electorate is, general importance given to politics is inverted, right? About how the most amount of importance is given to like your national, thinking about the PM, then maybe your chief minister, and then maybe your local municipality and your local assembly elections or something like that, versus the impact you have on your life, where the local person has the most impact in your life and progressively upward. So do you see, and as you mentioned also in your previous answer, that there is a certain level of increased awareness amongst the Kerala electorate. Do you see that kind of a more balanced level of importance given to those different levels of government among the average Kerala electorate?
So there is, regarding the local government, the municipalities, the corporation, the villages, there is complete lack of awareness and knowledge on how these local governments mechanisms operate.
Yeah.
So that is a significant aspect of the social engineering that we have to do here. The whole idea of local governance is passing power to the people. Now, how these mechanisms work is beyond the reach of the common man, because it has been purposefully kept away by the politicians. Because the local governments can do a lot. And the potential for people's participation in governance through the involvement in local government is huge in terms of social audit, in terms of participation in planning. But over the last couple of decades, the political establishments have clearly kept the people away from these institutions. So that's again a subject of education. So any new political organization, any new people's political organization like us, have a responsibility to run this particular education and this particular propaganda, because all the means by which information and tutoring and so on goes to the people is tuned in such a manner that these aspects do not reach the people. So you mentioned about media, right? So we don't just fight against traditional political parties. There is a direct or indirect fight against the existing media system as well, because they're clearly working for the established political parties. And I don't take it as an exceptional scenario. I would, at any point in history, I would expect all these significant power and influential centers favoring the establishment in power. So I take it as a normal condition, the way media is behaving. But coming back to that, your particular question, functioning of the local bodies is a myth to the people, and it is purposefully kept. People are purposefully kept ignorant on the functioning and the opportunity we have in people's participation in governance through the local government bodies. So that's a major area that we need to work on.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up, and this is something I think Tony had talked about earlier also. I mean, the way politics is currently being handled in India on a mainstream level, and to some extent, I'm assuming even in Kerala, is this whole cult of personality, following this cult of personality kind of thing, right? So as part of that, the social engineering that you were talking about, what is the way that you can look to maybe getting people out of this cult of personality, that irrespective of how positively they may feel about the leader currently, the larger leader, say either it's a state leader or the national leader currently, how do you kind of move them from following a single person to following ideologies, following actions, following progress, actual ground progress realities versus this stuff? So how do you go about trying to get the people in that stream?
So the first step in any such activity would be to have your own network, where you communicate to people at the ground level. So now, since the media is out of reach, the various organizations, even civil society leaders are out of reach. So they again favor the established political power. So the first step is to develop a network which would give you that reach to the common man. So that's where the organization building comes in. So building your organization at the local body level, at what we say the ward level or the booth level becomes very significant there. And there you have to present the numbers and facts, and it is again a time-consuming job, because people would have, like you said, already planted a particular image of a particular leader, a particular organization, and to shift from there, it takes facts and figures and the continuous communication and continuous questioning. So that is again significant. When you question these leaders in public, and when they are short of answers, that's when people start questioning, at least in their minds. So publicly questioning the leaders becomes very critical. Publicly questioning, publicly challenging them. The difference in questioning and challenging.
And that's where it, I think, all comes back to the way the media needs to kind of, what the role of the media needs to be, where the media versus being, as we encounter now, a lot of the Godi media kind of phenomenon, versus a media that actually is focused on the truth and focusing on questioning and being a opposition to the government on the issues rather than just from an ideological point of view.
And I have a small bit of a follow-up question, or just taking off from what Srikeit and you were just talking about a while back, Nipun. So, like, for any political structure, be it a small one or a big one, is a certain amount of theater inescapable? Like, you just spoke about publicly challenging, for example, the current leaders, right? And even that, I mean, even at the most rational, sane level, there is a certain level of coverage or certain takeaway that you want people to have from that, right? And you obviously want the media to pick up on that as well. And of course, we are seeing how this plays out with respect to the cult of personality, both at a state and national level, like Srikeit said. So is this sort of theater, is that inescapable from politics at any level? Because even at a most basic level, you need to communicate something, either your ambitions or your achievements to people who hold that power of a vote. So is that something that's that you constantly have to think about, like not just, okay, this is a policy that we have, this is what we've done, but what is the PR ability of that? How do we communicate this, or this is the potential that it has to travel with the media?
Of course, you have there is a theater out there, and now the question is what you are presenting or what you're dramatizing. Is it based on facts and figures? Is it based on truth? Now, to give you an example, now during the 2018 floods, people outside Kerala were highly appreciative of how Pinarayi Vijayan handled the situation, or how the floods were tackled. Right?
Yeah,
now,
myself included.
So Tony and I had a discussion. So I was in the field in the district of Ernakulam in Alua, Parur taluks. So when we look at it from the field, what you see on the television are two different things. So you have the chief minister giving awards to the policemen and other rescue services, making statements on the giving press releases and press conferences. And on the ground, we have the administration running away from when the water rising. The administration moves away. Administration comes to a standstill. People, the volunteer activities responds to the need, and the results are produced by the society, the volunteers and the youth. And then we find the administration or the district collector and their mechanisms being very inefficient. They're not even aware of what route to take, how to take how to do the rescue operation, how to take supplies to certain regions, and so on. The nitty-gritties on the ground. So the nitty-gritties and the challenges on the ground are resolved not by the state, not by the political parties, but by a different mechanism. And on the television, the chief minister puts up a show, and the people people outside tends to believe that it is a state machinery which has done the job, but it is not the state machinery which has done the job, right? So how does the drama convey is a question. The drama and the theater is there, but how far it is distant to the truth is a question.
So it brings me to that uncomfortable sort of realization that there is no mileage to be gained from silence in some sense. It's not like you can silently do your job and then people will pick it up and like we say in cricket, let the bat do the talking. But over here, you need to do a bit of the talking yourself. So it's not just about doing those relief operations, but also talking about it, which I guess might put some people in a sort of uncomfortable situation, especially. But to me, it sort of seems to be inescapable from the job, especially from what you just said right now. Would that assessment be correct?
Yes, because it is true. You need to convey a certain sequence of logic. See, most of the people are logical, but there's always a certain sequence of logic. Now, this sequence of logic is evident to somebody in the field, which is what we generally call experience and so on, right? When you're out of college, you have the logical theory in your mind. You have that logical thinking in your mind. But in what sequence your logic works to a given situation, is learned from experience. So you always need to convey the sequence of logic. Now, if someone else has to think in that sequence, either he has to physically experience that sequence in reality, or you have to narrate that logical sequence. So again, this narration of logical sequence takes us back to that question of theater. You can fill in this logical sequence with lies, and and mislead people. That's what most of these politicians do currently. So it is very important for us to get the correct narration of the logical sequence.
Yeah, I noticed that little wicked smile that you gave, and I'm sure if we pressed you on that, we'd get a lot more stories. But really,
I'm just going to actually allude to that. But Nipun, to your earlier point of publicly challenging politicians, I think they've figured the way out. Instead of doing press conferences, now politicians are actually doing podcasts. So it's all one-way communication. You can't speak to them, right? But on this whole question of logical sequence, truth, drama, etc., you encountered it firsthand, if you're comfortable talking about it, right? When the flyover in Vaitla was funded by public money, was built, but it took a politician to open it, and then you try to intervene. And what happened? If you're comfortable talking about it.
I wonder why you choose the term, why you are comfortable to, it's a public matter. I would talk about it
go ahead. I just meant like if there's like, it's personally traumatic, then don't. But otherwise, please feel free. We'd love to hear the story from your side.
So the Vaitla Bridge, it's a flyover in one of the busiest road junctions in Kerala, and this was completed weeks before the inauguration date. In fact, the inauguration date was never announced until we got involved in a protest to open the flyover. So since this was the busiest junction in Kerala, every day evening and during office hours in the morning, you had a very long traffic block extending into a few hours. You had ambulances getting stuck there, lakhs of liters of fuel being wasted. So people, there was a anger in people who were traveling and taking that route. And we did a protest on the day the load test, not on the day the load test was completed, but 2 days after load test was completed and the result was available. So from a technical perspective, the bridge was ready to be open to public on December 30, 2020, if I believe, December 30. And after the protest, the date was announced, the inauguration date was announced as January 9th. Okay. And on January 5th, the bridge, the flyover, was opened by the public, instigated by us, which led to my arrest, and I spent 9 days in jail on false charges. So I'll come to the way we talked about the media. We also need to talk about judiciary as well. As police and judiciary. That's a different important topic. So the flyover issue was again the question there was, why should public suffer because for an inauguration? So that's a very progressive question that we took up against a so-called progressive government. If you look at the Sabrimala issue and so on, the left government, the Pinarayi Vijayan government, markets itself in Kerala and in the rest of India as being a very progressive government, a party with a progressive modern outlook. So the question we raised was, look, the government can take credit for a construction like this. The government can hold a function to take credit for a construction like this. Why would you stop traffic onto a flyover which is ready to use for that particular event? What is the logic? So it was an illogical and irrational act. So there was no answer to it. So that resulted in the whole activity of the bridge being opened up for public prior to the inauguration.
And that's where the question about, I think, the state machinery also needs to come in, right? That you're not just fighting, the narrative or the logic, but also the state machinery, which is very heavily loaded in favor of whoever is in power. And the narrative that follows on media is also in some ways handled by them, right? So even though this, in some senses, is theater based on truth, neither of those things were the favorable outcome in this situation, right?
It's a lot about credit management in some way, right? Like, I mean, we saw similar things with those politicians getting pictures taken in front of oxygen cylinders and stuff, right? Like, it's about getting the attribution for this particular progress project from a politician at the risk of actually delaying that progress simply because that attribution needs to be coming at a certain time. I also remember there was a similar thing that happened in Delhi or somewhere in the NCR area about where a particular flyover was delayed. And I mean, it was more an organic act by the people who just came and removed the barricades and just started using the flyover because they were just too tired. And that thing I feel really strongly about these things. Like, it just feels so ridiculous that there is an attribution that needs to be done before the public can use things they have paid for.
Yeah, what I was also alluding to was the fact that, like Nipun mentioned, it's an extremely progressive kind of narrative that's put out about Kerala. But the fact that, the police actually stormed into Nipun's house in the middle of the night without even proper papers, threw him in jail and basically charged with non-bailable offenses for something that didn't happen is something that we should all know. To say that, when we say liberal champions exist everywhere, the state is very much the carrier of violence across wherever that
actually is. This is a thing, right? So all the reform that needs to be done by someone in power, but the system is what allows them to be in power. So it's like asking an alcoholic to blow up a distillery. It's not going to happen. Our only hope is, ordinary people like Nipun, coming in and asking difficult questions and making a difference. So more people across the country have to take this up, and Nipun's sort of experiences and his blueprint, which starts basically from serving the community and gaining trust, and then sort of coming from there as a representative of the community, a representative of the people. It's some kind of a redefinition of democracy that holds a sliver of hope, because otherwise all these megalomaniacs, everyone by definition is a megalomaniac dedicated merely to hanging on to their seat of power, because the moment they lose power, it is emasculation, it is complete irrelevance, right? So they cannot be out of power, they cannot countenance that. And on the other hand, we have people like Nipun who are asking very simple questions like, what about the people who live here? What about the people who live in this neighborhood? What about, and how is the system going to recognize those questions? I think that's what it is. It's a transformation that needs to happen more widely, is what I feel. Yeah.
Let me also just say that of the 5 people on this call, Nipun looks like the person least likely to have gone to jail. Just saying, if people were to pick one of these.
Good thing podcast is a visual medium, Chuck. So, so Nipun's actually dressed up really nicely and looks fresh. The rest of us have rolled out of bed, so that's what Chuck's referring to. But Nipun, I think you wanted to say something.
A couple of things I would like to mention. One, there's a very interesting part to the non-bailable offenses they charged against me. So there's this Public Property Destruction of Public Property Act. So the provisions under that act is non-bailable. So now opening up, removing barricades and opening a bridge to traffic doesn't attract any, non-bailable offense. You have to, but if you throw stones at a government building, government bus, and if you destroy, the government public property, it attracts non-bailable, charges. Now, this law is enacted to prevent destruction of public property. Interestingly, how this act is applied in this particular case was they first to jail us during the first few days. The police orally presented before the magistrate court that the bridge, the construction of the flyover was incomplete, and because hundreds of vehicles passed over the flyover, the road surface got damaged. So because we opened the flyover, the road surface got damaged and the public property was destroyed. So that was the reason for charging the PDPP Act. Now, from the very next day, people started trolling this particular point because the bridge was complete and heavy trucks had rolled onto the bridge to do the load test, to measure the deflection. The load test of heavy trucks with, full load rolls onto the bridge and they measure the, the deflection. So people, started trolling that argument. The very next day, police changed the public destruction argument to a different fact. They put up the argument that a group of people led by me came and destroyed the barricades kept to prevent entry of vehicles into the. So they changed the argument because if the road was damaged by 100 vehicles, so the people put up a question because there was a nearby bridge which had to be rebuilt because of construction issues. So people started saying, if this road surface was damaged by 100 vehicles passing over it, then probably this bridge will have to be reconstructed. So then the police had to change the narration to say that no, road surface was not damaged, but the barricades were destroyed.
Amazing.
So now, point is the magistrate took these arguments. Magistrate, the lower courts took this argument to send people to jail during COVID. So the magistrates, many of the magistrates have political positions, and they do not work as part of the judiciary, but they work as part of the political party. So that is what happens in many of the cases across India. We are aware of situations where magistrates and sometimes even higher judges of higher courts have taken irrational and illogical positions. So this is a major threat that the nation faces. So that to happen, in Kerala, for this to happen during a communist party rule, yes, for something like this, this
ironic. Ironic. I just feel like the only natural escalation to what you went through, Nipun, would have been if the construction itself was incomplete and you and a set of volunteers actually came and completed the construction and you were charged with that. So instead of being charged for destruction of public property, you would have been charged with the construction of the only way this could have become even weirder. No, that's fascinating. And thanks for that. There's so much that you've actually just shed light on, and sure we could go on talking about this forever. And there are a couple of, just coming back to slightly more fundamental things. There's one question that I just wanted to ask, and something that we were just talking about before you joined as well. So you touched upon this problem of short-termism right at the beginning, right? Everybody, when a party comes to power, immediately they think about, all right, how do I retain power next time? And I'm not sure if there is a solution to that this time, But if there was one thing, I'm sure you've seen it on ground as well, while we can sit and theorize reading our articles and all that over here, you've seen this on ground. What are some of the things that you think can be done to improve democracy as a whole? I'm not talking about with respect to a particular party or, about certain narratives, or we should move away from religion or whatever the case may be. But at a more fundamental level, what do you think can be done to improve democracy as a whole? One thing that I could think about, for example, is doing away with the whole first past the post system, for example. But you are on ground, you probably have a little more nuance into this. So anything that you can think of?
See, I represent V4 People Party. One of our key position is that the RTA Act Section 4.2 should be implemented. So we do have a tool in our hands now to, push democracy to the next level, which is the RTA Act. Now, what RTA Act Section 4.2 says is that every government agency, every government department should publish all public data through internet. So there's a use of the term internet in that act, through internet, which means on their website, so that citizens do not have to use this act. Now, basically, RTA Act, other sections describe the RTA application. You have to stick a 10 rupee stamp and file an RTA application, and you get a reply to that. Or sometimes you don't get reply, you file appeals and so on. So, but the crux of that act is the government should publish all public data suo motu, so that there should not be need to file an RTA application. Now, if this section is implemented, this is going to dramatically change everything. Now, I can explain that with respect to this Whitela flyover issue as well. Now, suppose the government had released in a time-bound manner the documents relating to the construction of the bridge. What would have happened is on December 30, in the public domain, a document would have been available which would establish beyond any doubt in the court of law that the construction of the bridge is complete. Say if RTX Section 42 had been implemented on December 30, there would have been a document in the public domain which establishes that the bridge is ready for traffic. Now, the moment that the document is in the public domain, the right to travel, comes into picture. It becomes evidence for any public interest litigation that goes to a court. If in today's scenario, you go to a court with public interest litigation, the court will ask government for a report, will submit a document. The government will take its own time, will give excuses, and will postpone the session 3, 4, 6 times to present the document before the court or to give a report before the court. So all this, this is just an example, The other example is the large-scale encroachments that happen. For example, there is another area where we are in a continuous fight. Large-scale encroachments of water bodies, canals. Now, the survey documents are kept hidden purposefully. The sketches, the survey sketches are kept, the land records. It's very difficult to get copies of survey sketches and so on from the revenue department because it's purposefully kept hidden from the public so that people do not realize the theft that is going on of public property. So that's another example where, if the revenue department is forced to implement RT Act Section 42, all the land records will be in the public domain. Then every Tom, Dick and Harry will be able to point out the theft that is going on in their neighborhood, whether it is a public road or whether it is the public canals. In the specific context of Kerala, the water bodies.
You were saying specifically the water bodies, right? Yeah. And actually on one of our earlier Simplified episodes, we covered the Murder, the flats, which ultimately got demolished, and how the people who bought it probably never had an idea of that they were on basically illegal land, right?
Yeah. So that's because this is a whole mafia of political leaders and working on to encroach onto public land and water bodies. So it's so most of these cases are not just CRZ violations, the coastal regulatory zone. Most of these cases are also encroachments into public water bodies. So, and it's having a great impact on the holding capacity, the water holding capacity of the water bodies here, and which is worsening the flood situation. The total volume that used to hold rainwater or flood water has reduced drastically, leading to water level rising in residential areas, for example. So it's all linked. If we have these documents out in the public domain, the common man would be empowered to fight to protect public property.
Yeah, it would change even media incentives, right? The moment it's there on the internet and someone puts it out and the media finds, oh, hey, here's a news worth reporting and I don't have to do any investigation. Someone's actually dug it out for us. Then they'll change the reporting. But Nipun, I think you've done one big blunder here by letting the government know that this is such a powerful thing. We've ensured that they'll never activate this provision of the law.
So that's where a movement, I believe, should arise in India, for implementation of the RTA Act Section 42, because the RTA Act application route should be restricted to, say, matters of, personal matters. Like you have filed a complaint, and what did they follow up on that complaint? That is when you have to use RTA application. Why would you have to send an RTA application to get a copy of a survey sketch, a public document? And the government officials are complaining that they're getting too many RTA applications. So most of the 90% of the RTA applications are on public documents. So let them publish it so moto. That's what the Act says.
Yeah. So, Nipun, couple of questions.
In fact, let me just add. In fact, Pinarayi Vijayan in Assembly after the Whitela Bridge incident said, RTA activists are turning into terrorists. That's the statement he made in the Kerala Assembly. So, they are feeling the terror because we are asking questions.
Yeah, that's a interesting definition of terrorist. But so a couple of questions. One is that even as people who are like, technically follow the news very closely, we are not aware of how to get involved in, local self-government or local government activities. How do you get involved, A? And also, do you see that the movement is picking up, that there are people who are incentivized to come in and spend time here, because you yourself actually have to earn a living on the side, but also be constantly engaged in politics 24/7. So is this a model that you see coming up? Is it sustainable? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it is very much sustainable. When you start working as a team, you can always schedule and distribute work. So if you look at our work life, it's again a question of work-life balance. It's a matter of work-life balance. It is very much feasible, especially when you start working as a team and getting involved in issues, and even if there are no issues, for improvements in the local governance. But currently, the problem in India, what Tony mentioned, is because you would eventually get into conflicts with local politicians. So there's a major task of conflict management. And this conflict management is not primarily from difference of opinion. The reason for conflict is corruption. So at the local body level and at median levels or even higher levels, when you get involved, you are actually blocking source of income for many career politicians.
And that, in some senses, is also a direct effect of how they first get into power, right? You have to spend quite a bit of money to actually get elected in the first place in the system as it stands. So as a business investment, you're looking at your return on investment as well. And the only way out of it is corruption, or so it would seem.
I wouldn't simplify it that way. I see a lot of greed here. I see a lot of greed among us people, because there's so much public wealth. If you look at major chunk of corruption money, for example, in Kochi and around, it's from real estate. It's from the politicians make most of the money by helping the real estate mafia encroach public water bodies and public land and so on. And the amount of money that they make is huge. Politicians, for example, we know that a Kochi Corporation councillor would make minimum of 1 to 2 crores during his 5-year period as councillor. It's a very minimal amount. So you find councillors building large, huge houses, after a term as a councillor here. So it's not just about putting money back into politics for political activities. There's a greed that is coming into the picture. Because initially, if you take 50 years back, even many of the party founders of CPM or Congress worked there, did their politics with commissions that they gained, from public projects. The contractors routing commissions into the political parties for those political parties to flourish. So what I was saying is, let's keep aside the legitimacy and what is right and what is wrong. Let's look at it in terms of let's quantify it in terms of money. There was corruption before, where the parties had to route they routed commissions from public projects into their party activity. From that level, it has progressed to an organized loot of public wealth for personal gains as well, to a large extent. So there are businessmen, there are politicians, there are religious leaders, and other elements also. It has become an activity of public loot, from a mere act of diverting, money spent on public project through commissions from contractors for the functioning of political parties. From that activity, this has gone into a stage of looting of public wealth. So we must realize that progress in this illegitimate activity.
Yeah. Okay, we've spent quite a bit of time. So, Nipun, I think some of the takeaways is that we have to always ask the right questions. But at a local government level, or as an individual, right? How do we ask the right questions, and who do we ask them to, and how do we get more involved? As professionals who are probably running a job, what are the simple ways in which some people should get involved for a better government and democracy?
2 things. Now, RTI is a very good mechanism. Even if you do not want to reveal yourself, you can decide to have a common address and you can send questions that will reveal information. And this information can come out through social media. All right. So RTI is a very, very useful tool to get information from government, and it's an art. Crafting with questions is an art. You can always craft questions in a certain way that wouldn't really understand. Very, very useful means, very peaceful means of getting very critical data from all levels of government and then putting it across to the public. So instead of government suo motu publishing their data, some of us can work to use the RTA application to get this data and then publish it, right? So that is one very useful means. Second is getting involved in your local body function. So if you look at the Panchayati Raj Act or the Municipality Acts, there are provisions like, the Gram Sabhas or, ward committee meetings. So by participating in ward committee meetings, so the minutes of ward committee meetings are even admissible in evidence in all courts of law. So as a member of a particular ward, as a voter of a particular ward or local, ward of a particular local body, you have the, it's slightly different in different states, and I think Mumbai, for example, has a different set of local body rules. So based on that, there's always an opportunity to participate at the ward level in the project planning and social auditing phase. So one should read through the Panchayati Raj Act or the concerned local body rules and participate in these meetings. We can always go into these meetings and, they will have to present how is the fund spent or distributed for various activities in the ward. So usually what happens is the cronies of these political leaders would attend those meetings and they would sign the documents as they want, and then they'll implement it the way they want. The more common people starts participating, that would stop. So there are these ward committee meetings that we should start attending.
Yeah, so that was a good suggestion, actually. And that's something that all of us can do. It means sacrificing some of your free time and not watching the latest on Netflix or whatever. But yeah, if you're public spirited enough, and of us should be, I'm very, it bothers me a lot. I live in Mumbai, and the colossal waste of public money, what Nipun said, it's ridiculous. Right now, what is happening is people are redoing footpaths, okay? And they were fine to begin with. And it's just like it's being looted. The money is just being, robbed. Not only are they doing footpaths, they're also putting some very fancy steel rails on the footpaths. And anyone who's been in Mumbai knows that footpaths, basically nobody walks on them. Really, literally nobody. It's encroached upon. And the other thing that really bothers me is impunity with which people park on public roads. And, there are, near my house, there are businesses who deal in second-hand cars, and they've literally encroached kilometers of the road, just parking their merchandise on that. And there's some local politician, and there's really nothing. I mean, it causes right now because of COVID and lockdown and everything. It's not. Otherwise, there are colossal traffic jams. It's public inconvenience. You look at it from some of my workers who used to take 15 minutes and 20 minutes to get to factory, now spend more than an hour each way. So they are wasting their productive time traveling to.
It's highway robbery, basically.
Yeah, highway robbery is what
literally, yeah.
But Tony, it's time for me to go to the police station, because I have to go every Saturday and appear before the investigating officer to help him figure out how we destroyed the barricades.
That's as good a reason.
This is the best end to a simplified episode.
The most badass.
So how long do you have to do that, Nipun?
So it's until they submit the investigation report, so they'll take their own time. So the typical duration is 90 days, but they never do it within 90 days, especially when they register false cases like this. They have no idea how to investigate.
Part of the harassment.
So it's already 135 days, right?
Yeah.
And technically, if there wasn't COVID, would this also mean that you wouldn't be able to travel outside for a long period of time?
So there's a COVID lockdown now, but I have to go because technically I have not received any orders, or the court has not made any public statements that those who have to appear before investigating officers need not do it during lockdown. So there is no such announcement from the court. So I have to go. So it might be true that if I don't go today and if the police request the court for cancellation of bail, I could probably give this as a reason, but there are again chances. So I would let. I'm a law-abiding citizen. So since there has been no instruction from the court, I would go appear before the investigating officer and give my signature.
You should go because just saying that I was appearing on Simblified would be a very, very bad experience. The most minded cop.
Oh, man.
And the other thing that we didn't mention on the podcast is that Nipun actually stood for elections from the Kochi constituency, where the primary demands of the people was that there needs to be a seawall in Chellanam because floods are a major issue there. The seawall has not yet been built and we are in the middle of a flood, and Nipun has actually been coordinating flood relief activities in the middle of the podcast. So I think we should definitely thank you for all the insight.
But Nipun, thank you so much, man. This is very...
Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, very different from what we normally talk about, which I think we should do more of. But no, seriously, this has been utterly fascinating. And good luck with everything that you have coming up. Good luck with whatever's going to happen today. And
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Deepak, Srikeit, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Bye. That was an awesome... one of the most awesome episodes I've been on. And it's inspiring to have someone, someone who's exactly like us, finding enough public purpose in him to go and take cudgels on behalf of everyone. So it's great. And I think the most...
Yeah, I know. We had a poor connection, but honestly, one very honest question I wanted to ask him was, how does he keep up the optimism when all of these guys constantly are like, I mean, they're doing all this nonsense against him personally, where he's facing all of this.
So that's why most of us can't do it, but some of us can, and we must try. We must
more power to people like him.
We must do our bit. We must ask questions. We must be regular pains in the asses for people in power. That's something we should do.
But you know what is funny is that the next podcast episode is us talking about how useless engineers are. And, so actually, you might want to listen in the reverse sequence. We recorded this episode after the next one you hear.
Yeah, stay safe. Stay public spirited and stay simplified.
Excellent.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I would like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Srikeit, and PayPal. Thank you so much. You make everything possible. Before I recommend a couple of episodes, I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about Ankush Champanerkar. Ankush was a team member who we lost due to COVID-related complications. He was a really fun guy, and I wish I knew him better than I got to know him in the short time he was with us. But I hope that you can remember him in your thoughts and prayers. Also, quick reminder about Pod for Change, the initiative set up by the podcasting community, along with Give India, the NGO partner. You can go to tinyurl.com/podforchangeindia, and I'm sure that it would be much appreciated any donations that you could give. With that, let me quickly give you a couple of highlights from this week. Aditi Mittal was on Cyrus Says. Great episode, do check that out. On the Habit Coach, Ashton talks about using the word impossible and suggests some better alternatives. On Advertising is Dead, Varun was joined by Harsh Lal, the co-founder of the Soul Store. On This Round is on Me, Gauri talks to Pankit Desai, who is the co-founder and CEO of Secure Tech. And finally, I'd like to mention that we have a new show called Tede Mere Raste, hosted by Keshav Chaturvedi. This time it's a trip to the beautiful blue city of Jodhpur, but every week he's going to tell you about his travels as a photographer. It's really well put together, really well done. I couldn't be more excited about the show. Please do definitely check that out. And with that, I hope we see you again next week.
पेश खिदमत है आपकी शान में हमारे अंजुमन से. Hi, I am Sadaf.
And I'm Arshit. खाने का इतिहास, economics, policy, psychology, सब है मेन्यू पे.
Only on the Naan Curry podcast every Wednesday, सिर्फ IVM podcast app या वेबसाइट पर, या फिर जहां से भी आप अपने पॉडकास्ट सुनते हो.